All right, we are recording. My name is Janet Chappelle, and I welcome you to our Women's Month speaking series for Sharon Montgomery. I'm sitting in for Sierra Belzer. I know you probably see her name up there, but no picture. She couldn't be with us today, and so I'm sitting in for her. My name is Janet Chappelle, like I stated earlier. I do have Dr. Jonelle McCullum. She is here also with Sharon Montgomery. And we have Larissa and Stephanie Adams. Thanks for joining us today. And I'm reading the names, how they're listed on the screen. So we're going to go ahead and get started with our Lunch and Learn speaker series. We have attorney Barbara Wells, formerly of Cable and Howell Law Firm. And she can share more additional information about her if she would like. But we're just going to go through a series of questions just to get an idea of how Attorney Wells would handle certain situations that may come across her desk as an attorney, and we can just have dialogue from there. Does this sound good?
Sure. Although I actually have a PowerPoint on a kind of a combination of two different topics, but I can take questions if that's what you'd rather I do.
Okay. So Janelle, do you have her PowerPoint?
I'm still working on it. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I was gonna say it hadn't come through yet, but as soon as I get it, I'll pull it up.
So I did work as an attorney for Capel and Howard, and I worked primarily as an employment discrimination attorney, primarily on the employer side, although I did an awful lot of cases for individuals who were suing employers as well. I was terrible at that, frankly, because I didn't have the heart to charge people who had just been separated from their jobs when I recovered anything on their behalf. And that's not an excellent business model. So my law partners were kind of, I would say, displeased about the tendencies of my plaintiff's side practice. And okay, I'm just going to stop trying to send the PowerPoint. So when Dr. McCullough initially contacted me, she gave me a choice of talking about diversity topics or wellness, workplace wellness, sort of that sort of thing, because she knows from being my friend that I've had sort of a radical change in my life brought about by the discovery of some health conditions in the past year. And so I decided to try and weave together my thoughts on wellness with a sneaky segue to why I think diversity is so essential. And we'll see. I haven't given this talk before, but we'll see how effectively I can do that, especially since I don't have the ability to show you my adorable slides that I spent countless hours trying to put together for you. So a little bit about me. Then there was a picture of me 50 pounds heavier in my power suit. It was the last professional headshot I got done when I was working for the firm. I had been practicing law about 30 years at the time. I had practiced in big cities and in Montgomery, which I consider to be a small city. I had done criminal, civil. I had been a partial owner of my business. I'd worked for federal judges. I graduated with honors from the top of what was then the number 7 law school in the country. And by all appearances, I was at the top of my game. I'd won best lawyer awards in employment law and best woman lawyer in Montgomery, which I used to jokingly say was the first time my boobs had won a prize, probably the only time, but it's okay to laugh. Oh, you all are muted. Oh my gosh, I'm not going to have any feedback. That's going to suck. Okay, so love to be
We're here. I promise you, we're here.
Okay, I'll unmute. That was funny.
Yeah, I was laughing.
Like the deafening silence. So, like on the outside, I looked like a person who had it all together. But what was going on the inside was sort of a different story. I was a high functioning, anxious and depressed individual and had been for a long time. I was morbidly obese. I had high blood pressure, high cholesterol, high triglycerides, sleep apnea, hypothyroidism. Physically, my body was breaking down. I was a mother who didn't spend enough time mothering. I was a wife who didn't spend enough time being a wife or a partner to my spouse. I was a business owner who felt like she was a fraud and a failure and never doing enough, reinforced by the fact that COVID was a really hard time in the business world. I don't need to tell anybody else that, but like there was a lot of extra pressure brought down on that. And so I was a person who was not dealing well with my circumstances. But I tried some things. So I knew that, I needed to try exercise and improving my diet to see if I could get a handle on my health with something other than a pill container full of maintenance medications. And, I would sporadically get started and my life would just become overwhelmed by work or something else would pop up. I also was compulsive being the indispensable woman in that if people asked me to do things, I didn't say no. I felt like if I didn't do it, nobody would do it. It was a good thing that needed to get done. So I was on nonprofit boards and I'm a volunteer for scouting and I have been for almost 2 decades at this point. And I'm still doing it. I'm just starting with another troop as we speak. And I'm somebody that has sort of big feelings, big passions, and when I'm excited and passionate about something, I try to be a part of the change as well as just talking about it. And so I was trying that. I took a painting class. I said yes to a movie and acted in a couple of short films, even though I had literally no idea anything about acting and was the last person I would want to see on a TV screen. But like, I read that Shonda Rhimes book, The Year of Yes, which is an excellent book, but be careful because if you're literal like I am, I was like, well, I'll do this. I'll say yes for a year. Well, I said yes to anything. And I should have been saying no more because I had a plate that was overwhelmingly full. And so I tried talk therapy. I was on antidepressants and anxiety medicine. And like I said, from the outside, from all appearances, I was doing all the things. And people would say things over and over again, like, I don't know how you do all the things that you do. And there was a book that came out, a novel a few years ago called I Don't Know How She Does It. And it was talking about this businesswoman who she's a mom, she's a wife, she's all these things, and she's way overextended and falling apart, but secretly behind the scenes. And like, it all kind of comes to a head because she's got to bring some sort of treat for a school class party. And so she like feels guilty because she's not making something from scratch. And so she goes to the store and like buys store-bought desserts and like throws flour all over them and beats them with like a rolling pin and stuff to make them look homemade, which I wouldn't have done that. I'd have just stayed up all night to make something from scratch. And I did that over and over again. And then, social media is the beast. So I'd show it off on Facebook or Instagram. And that was leading other people to feel bad about themselves and not, it was not the whole truth. And as we know, there's a lot of half truths on social media. So what happened, right? I tried all these things. Eventually, I decided I didn't want to be a defense lawyer anymore, and I couldn't be a private sector plaintiff's lawyer. So I thought I'm going to align my passion for civil rights with my practice, and I'm going to go take an entry-level job with the EEOC, and I won't be responsible for anything or anybody. I won't be anybody's boss because I was, running a practice group and responsible for marketing, and I had way too many hats on. So I started a position with the EEOC. I actually applied last February and interviewed last March, got the job in April, and I started last June. Little did I know, there's an old saying, man plans, God laughs. And I love that saying because boy, was God laughing at Barbara Wells, thinking she had solved her problems. Okay. And I can remember, I marched into the managing partner's office and I'm like, I quit. I'm going to work for the EEOC. I want to align my practice with my principles. And he was like staring at me, like not comprehending at all what I was saying. Like, and he literally was like, I don't understand what that means. And I was like, well, I know you know what those words mean. I don't know how to explain this to you if you think that your practice does totally not have to be connected to your principles, right? So I'm like, I generally oppose discrimination on the basis of fill in the blank. And most of the time I'm defending people. And I used to tell myself that I can help them do the right things, but increasingly they don't listen. So it looks a lot like a midlife crisis. My son says that this purple in my hair is actually my midlife crisis. I actually think this is my wild hair that keeps me from going back to the practice of law, and a reminder every day that I am more than just a person in a suit. But what happened was I went in for routine lab work with my doctor's office. I got some irregular test results. He had me repeat the labs. And then the next thing was a call from his office saying I needed to have an ultrasound of my liver. And nobody's telling me why or what's happening, but I understand that it's potentially my liver because that's what they want the ultrasound of. And communication was poor. I was really not happy with how it was being handled. And I've always been passive compliant with doctors, which is weird because in my law practice, I'm this, taking names and doing it for my clients. And I prided myself on being a bulldog of an advocate. It's like somebody called me a bulldog once. So I put it in my LinkedIn profile as bulldog for my clients. Like I was so excited about that, but I wasn't ever that person for myself. I never showed up for myself. I was not on the list of people I was taking care of. I would march in to see a new client and I would be like, your worries stop now. It's my job. I will worry about this more than you ever dreamed about, which was true. And, put it down, put it on me. But what I was also carrying were my husband's worries and my kids' worries and, my friends' worries. And I just, I wasn't even on the list. So more tests go forward. And because it's not fun to have just one weird thing wrong with your body, at the same time, I showed up with this bizarre rash on my legs. This was last May. And it wasn't raised, it wasn't itchy, but it was very red and angry. And I had spots all over my legs. And then it started showing up on my arms. And, that's concerning when you randomly develop a pattern on your skin that didn't previously exist. And if you start Googling, which is really a bad idea, red rash, liver enzymes elevated, then, you find a whole panoply of things that can be wrong that cause both those things that are really life-threatening, serious conditions. So I was freaking myself out. Fortunately for me, my dermatologist diagnosed the spots as something called IgA vasculitis, which is a pretty uncommon autoimmune disease. Is like 100 or 200,000 adults in the country have it. And he was like, this is what it is. It's serious. You need to see a doctor. I'm like, wait, you are? Oh, a different kind. I got it. Because, our medical system is very fragmented. So he was only the skin guy, and I needed a rheumatologist who dealt with autoimmune diseases. And so I went to see my general practitioner thinking that was the way to get a quick appointment with a rheumatologist. And he's like, oh, we don't really have any good ones of those here in Montgomery. And, I'll try and get you something at UAB. The answer I received in June of 2023 was that I could be seen on April 20 in 2024. So next month. That finally I was finally in enough of a state that one night in the middle of the night, like 2 or 3 in the morning, I start Googling how to go to the Mayo Clinic because I'm ready to refer myself and get out of this state and get some health care. And really it was because I was worried about the autoimmune disease because I still didn't have any answers on the liver enzymes. They had said after the ultrasound that it was a little enlarged, but the doctors here were really kind of not super excited about whatever was going on with my liver. So I ended up going to the Mayo Clinic. I got a great rheumatologist. I'm on meds that have helped tremendously with my autoimmune disease, and that's no longer the thing that scares me the most. Good news, bad news. Bad news is I have cirrhosis of the liver. At this point in my life, I didn't even know that you could face something like cirrhosis, which obviously I had heard of in conjunction with drinking, because I think that's the only thing that people equate it with. But turns out about 25% of the US population have developed a condition called non-alcoholic liver disease, and it's lifestyle based. So if you eat a lot of stress and you eat the standard American diet and you don't exercise and you don't sleep right, especially if you have conditions like high cholesterol, high triglycerides, sleep apnea, hypothyroidism, obesity, pre-diabetes or diabetes, and or PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome, which I did not have, then you're at very high risk for your non-alcoholic fatty liver disease to progress to something they call NASH, which is non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, which is like a more severe level, and beyond that to cirrhosis and or cancer of the liver. And I was floored because how could there be this really large health risk? Like I figured my lifestyle induced disease risks were for diabetes and heart disease. And I thought I understood that I would have time to do something about that when I started getting warning signals like my sugar creeping up or my A1C, or if, my my blood pressure was higher than it was only mildly elevated, etc. But instead, I find myself at the Mayo Clinic and I have cirrhosis, which means that my liver is so scarred that it cannot grow or regenerate new healthy tissue, which is the liver is so amazing. It does like 500 necessary things for your body, most of which have to do with digestion or taking out toxins. And given about 2 years, you can fully regenerate all the tissue if you have a healthy liver. But once you get to the stage that I'm in, your liver cannot regenerate. The scar tissue is dead. It's dead forever, and the tissue around it can't compensate for it. It's doing all it can to just do the processes that it has to do. And there's no treatment currently available in terms of medication or surgery. I'm not sick enough for a transplant list. And so I'm too sick to get better, but I'm not sick enough yet for a transplant. Not that transplants always go well. So this was, as you can imagine, a shocking moment in my life. I was 56. I have 3 kids, one's still at home. I had all these hopes and dreams for what my retirement would be and had been saving really vigorously for it. And I had been like, I just couldn't believe that my chickens were coming home to roost in this way. And one of the reasons I don't like to emphasize, it's kind of a double bind because I don't like to emphasize that it's non-alcoholic because it could have just as easily been caused by some other self-abuse. The way I was having a relationship with food and my body and my health, it is still self-inflicted. So like it gets very strange when you have this repeated loop of conversations where people are like, but you really don't drink. And I was like, well, funny. Yes, that's true. But I did not take care of myself. So I think the designation of whether or not it comes from alcohol doesn't really do much for me. I guess it makes some difference when you're on the transplant list. I don't know, but they can tell from my labs that it's lifestyle and not drug use or alcohol use or hepatitis. Some hepatitis can cause this too. So this caused me to just full stop, it was a 2x4 upside the head. And fun fact, even though I was now at the EEOC, I was still working 18-hour days, which we weren't even supposed to be able to do. I was still tremendously stressed, not because I was in charge, but more stressed in some ways because I had no ability to make decisions to try and fix these really messed up cases that I inherited. And the decision making was all housed in the people that were up the food chain from me, and they weren't like listening. So that's stressful in a whole different way when you can see the train about to go off the cliff and you can't do anything and you're like, break, break. But so that wasn't better. And I thought I had done soul searching and reflection during COVID because my business had really slowed down and there was a lot more time for that, but I had only just begun to do that. And so what this diagnosis forced me to do was reprioritize everything about my life. So like I had to get myself and my wellness on the list. And I think that this is something that as working women, and I don't remember if there were any males on the call, but I think it's particularly problematic for working women. And I think that the studies bear that out. So, I have to be someone who is nothing like any human I've been before. And is nothing like my mother, because while she was trained as a nurse, she quit her job at my dad's insistence to stay home once there were kids, but she was the hardest working stay-at-home human on the planet. She did all of her cooking and baking from scratch. She made all of my dad's clothes because he was incredibly picky. She kept house like nothing like what I do. Like she would wash the walls on a regular schedule, and she would, she canned. And I mean, it was just like so many things. And so I come from really busy people, even though they weren't working outside the home. And really the root cause of my problem is everywhere you go, there you are, right? Hi, my name is Barbara. I'm a workaholic. And that's just the truth. And I think that somewhere along the line, I got so addicted to the accolades and the achievement that I thought that's where all my worth was, right? Was doing well, winning things, succeeding in those measures. And I wasn't really paying attention to the price that I was paying for it, which was my health. So I retired at the end of December. And I immediately got 5 job offers, which I was like, no, you don't understand. That's not how retirement works. And so I've been saying no. I'm still doing therapy. I've lost 20% of my body weight. I still have about 50 pounds more to lose. I'm terrified because I'm somebody who has not succeeded in maintaining a healthy weight at any point in my human existence. But I got to do it. And I eat like totally differently than I did before. If you want a separate TED Talk on getting away from the standard American diet, I'm available for that one. I'm giving it to several of my friends. But like, I have to show up for myself. And that looks like if I don't like my doctor, I find another one, I say something. And, when people ask me to do things that I'm really not in a position to do, I just politely say no. And I'm working on finding my value in my Barbara-ness, not to be too weird, but just in the fact that I'm here, that I'm a good friend, that I care about my kids, that I occasionally buy potato salad, as I did this morning, for the PTA, because they're doing a luncheon for the teachers. Instead of staying up all night buying potatoes and trying to make it from scratch, like that's going to be somehow a greater good and sacrifice, right? Like I've had to become a different human. And of course, there have been a lot of other changes in our family dynamic, because now my husband is the only one working and I had been the primary wage earner. And, there's all sorts of new things that I have to find ways to manage my stress about that don't include eating. But I'll tell you, I'm sleeping better than I've ever slept. I'm more successful about managing my mood. I've been able to reduce my blood pressure medicine, and I'm probably going to be able to get off it entirely if I keep the exercise up. I don't drink. I am not allowed pain medication like headache medication, which is, I don't see how I could have practiced law, because like I had a perpetual headache. I would be the office repository of the largest bottle of Excedrin migraine that was available at Costco, and everybody knew they could come to my office for antacids and migraine medicine. So what does that tell you about what my life was? I'm off antacids entirely for the first time since ever. I don't know. So big change, scary change, but necessary, possible change. And I'm blessed because I feel good. So, and I've tried some other things like, okay, so we've talked about the Western medicine is like, we don't have any meds for this. They're working on drugs for stage 3, but not for stage 4, which is where I am. So try losing weight and do none of the things that got you here in the first place. So basically be a different human. And so, I've been more open to alternative medicine or Western medicine, especially because when traditional medicine tells you change how you eat, I'm like, well, eating doesn't seem like medicine. But, maybe I was wrong about that. But Eastern medicine has lots of things about food, what we eat, the order we eat them in, the things, natural properties in things like radishes and onions and different ways that they interact with our body chemistry. So I've been open to exploring more of that. And I've got to be careful because the liver has to process everything that I ingest, right? So that's where it gets tricky. I have to be really careful about sourcing and not trying something that's too out there, because that'll give my liver a hard time. But also I've tried like infrared sauna and, things that I am educating myself from sources that I never before considered. And what took me to a place where I was open to seeing the value in different ways of doing things than I had considered from my own cultural paradigm, right? Because that's what I'm talking about doing here, is going outside of my comfort zone and my cultural paradigm and seeking information that I had not before considered. I'm desperate for winning strategies. And it was obvious to me that I needed to broaden the pool of information that I was seeking information from, broaden the sources, consider new things. And the best way to bring that kind of synergy and ideas to an organization is through diversity of your workforce. And there are all sorts of great studies, which were in my PowerPoint, that talk about the very significant, demonstrable, scientifically replicable outcomes that show better productivity, better creativity, better problem solving, more factually based problem solving when you have diversity in your work groups. And so I've always been someone who the value of diverse perspectives and diverse experience just made intuitive sense to me because I learn things from my friends all the time. And it's because they've had different life experiences. If I learn from my life experience, they're learning from theirs. Our life experiences are not identical. Like, why not amplify the problem solving ability by having people that have had different experiences at the table? And if you've ever been in a group trying to do like, you know, those crazy icebreaker games where you have to like do a spider web and all that other stuff. Like the way that the dynamics work with that, if you have like all people who are just like you versus if you have people that are different from you, it's very different. Like I was a camp counselor, so I've done a lot of these. And then I went through Leadership Montgomery and we did a whole weekend's worth of those kinds of things. And it's just interesting because there's this great reel. I wish I could find it. It's a group of men and a group of women at some sort of a party. And they're going to have a race where they stand in a chain holding hands. All the guys stand in a chain. First guy like puts a hula hoop and like steps through it, steps his other leg through it, and then like pushes it to the next guy. And they are timing to see how long it takes to get to the end. The women's group did it in half the time that the guys group did. It's fascinating because the first woman stepped through and then held it up, and all the women just stepped through while she was holding it up. Meanwhile, the guys are like gyrating around and everyone's trying to do it in their own way because they think they've got it figured out how best to get through it quickly. And one guy's trying to flick it with his bicep. And it's like, the difference in how their brains took on that problem made a huge difference in their outcome. And I think, you know, I just really believe in diversity. So what's the problem? So you've seen my hook, and that is you need balance in your own life. You need balance in your organization. You need diversity of solutions in your life. You need diversity of solutions in your organization because you're going to get better results. So why am I worried about this as we sit here today? Well, I'm worried because we have had a pattern recently where a propaganda machine or a group of people that have similar goals are trying to dismantle various aspects in society of which they disapprove. And it started really with a messaging around affirmative action that was completely distorted and misleading. And
Right.
I mean, just in the employment context, it just has never been what they made it out to be, which was a quota system for hiring women and minorities. And that's just not what has ever been a thing. The only times we've seen court ordered quotas is to remedy proven violations of systemic past discrimination. And that has not, I mean, there hasn't been one of those cases that has gotten to that point in quite a long time. So it really was a lot of, in my opinion, and this is the great thing about being retired, right? Like, if you don't like what I have to say, then, you know, don't invite me back. I got no boss you can go report it to. It's just all my unfiltered opinions, which is kind of freeing. But, and I don't have clients that I have to worry about offending. But like, I think that it spread from the propaganda about affirmative action, misrepresenting what it was, to attacks on educational admission practices that considered in any way race or underrepresentation in any way, if it had to do with race, sex, sexual orientation, but never considered that we have always had affirmative action, true, show enough affirmative action for in-state residents at publicly run schools and for the children of alums and donors at public and private universities.
That's right.
And nobody's talking about that, right? But so my law school was sued in one of those actions, and it breaks my heart because my law school class at the University of Michigan was the first time that the law school class mirrored the demographics of the population of the United States. We were 50% women. We had the same percentage of African Americans as were in the population of the country. We had the same percentage of Latino students as were in the population of the country. And boy, did we have great discussions. And all that got wiped out. All that got wiped out. And I still don't know why that was supposed to be justice. Obviously, I have strong feelings about that. And I feel like education is one place where we absolutely should be doing reparation to the past harms, because education was the heart of, some of the most damaging discriminatory practices in our country's history, both for Native peoples and for African Americans, really just for anybody that wasn't a standard basic white person like me. So that's where I am on that. And what I started seeing after the success in those cases about schools was it's starting to spread. And now they're going after two things that they conflate, and that is employment, any employment training, like, I don't know, like your program on your policy against discrimination and harassment and retaliation, which the EEOC would like you to do, and which is a defense to liability for employers. And therefore, I would, on the regular for 30 years, beg my employers to educate their people on their policies, because we're never going to fix it if we aren't identifying it. But now all of a sudden people are suing and saying that having to sit through those trainings is offensive and discriminatory and creates a hostile work environment. And these lawsuits have been popping up all over the country. At the same time, there are these organizations that have formed, and I had some of the names in my presentation that I don't have. And their whole purpose is to undo DEI programs in any way, shape, or form, whether that's programs where scholarships are offered, and internships, anything, just anything. And it's funny because I have been in rooms where people were trying desperately to figure out how they could improve diversity within a workforce at an entity without violating Title VII and engaging in intentional discrimination against white applicants, right? Like, they want to consider the race of the candidate to help the minority candidates to achieve better diversity within their organization. But if you say that that's your reason, then you have created a prima facie case of a Title VII violation. And, that becomes problematic. And one of the things that was standard advice previously, like for law firms, was, well, you should endow a minority scholarship at a law school, and then your firm is associated with helping, be supportive of minority representation in the community. Well, it's those kinds of scholarships that are under attack. And a couple of these organizations went after two very large liberal law firms, Morrison Forrester, and I can't remember the other one. And this kind of outrages me. The firms caved and got rid of their programs rather than fight it, because they didn't want the expense of the litigation, which of course makes my head explode, because how many times do we tell people to fight for the principles that are right, even though it's going to cost them money as lawyers, and then they're just going to cave when they could have represented themselves? It just makes me really mad. And that just emboldens these organizations to make more demands of corporate America. And they've also started coming after nonprofits that do grant making. There's a lawsuit that was filed against a nonprofit in Georgia, and I know about one in Texas, both of which were funding minority business enterprises, mostly run by people of color or women of color. And that was a criteria in their grant of the nonprofit. And so this other organization sued them to stop them from making those grants. Those lawsuits are still working their way through the system. The only bright spot that I can tell you about is that at least the lawsuits challenging training on, not creating a hostile work environment have started resulting in appellate level federal decisions, and most all of them have said that that is not a violation of Title VII, and what are you, crazy? Okay, so there are good cases, 10th, 4th, 2nd, and I don't know if there's one in the 11th or not, where those kinds of lawsuits have been rejected. The white people, I don't want to sit through anti-harassment training because it offends me, kind of right to be free from discomfort lawsuits. So those cases are going the same way, but I do worry, especially given the tenor of the appointees from the prior administration to the federal bench. There have been some dissents that I think are a little out there from some of these decisions. And it's, I don't think that the people that are motivated to try to do this are going to stop, just like they're not coming after teaching history that has not previously been taught, that might make people know something about which they might be ashamed, rightly so, history. So that's how I was going to pull it all together. I don't know if I did or I didn't. And I probably went over my time.
No, great. I mean, you shared, I'm actually taking notes and writing and trying to be in tune to everything that's being said. Thank you so much for sharing your information. And I'm sure we all can relate to the plate of life that you described earlier. We have multiple things that we all have to take care of, from self to family to jobs, our professions, and everything that comes after that just as well. You did share with us how to go about making changes, and you made a statement about reprioritizing life, and that is so important. If we don't do it, life will push us to do it, which ties into everything that you shared as well. You gave us some great tips on how we can reflect back on life changes that we may need to be in tune with and want to step up to the plate. You identify with therapy, learning how to say no. I think we all may be in that same position, not knowing when to say no, or even when to say yes. Sometimes we debate about it, but we should be in a firm place of knowing when to say no, especially if it's gonna bring harm to you, in any kind of way. Making those healthy choices, very important. Finding ways to make your life better. And that can come in so many ways. Reducing stress. I think stress is the number one thing. Some people may say, oh, I'm not stressed, but how do you really know if you are stressed? I think we need to start paying attention to those little cues for us as individuals of knowing how to identify with stress and identify with those stressors and how to better manage them. Showing up for yourself, self-care, self-love is very important. With it being, Women's Month, and we wanted to do the lunch and learn sessions, just take time for ourselves, surround ourselves with, those other individuals that can relate to us, that can bounce things off personally and professionally to help us move throughout the day is very key. And that's what we wanted to kind of focus with our lunch and learns, and you really contribute to that today. I do have one question I want to ask, because the questions I had, you lumped it all together and answered them, because that's what I was trying to keep up with. And I was like, well, I can't ask this question. She's already answered it. But you gave great tips on how to create work-life balance. If everyone was listening, she gave us some great tips on how to do that. But I do have one just to get your thoughts on the imposter syndrome. Do you think the imposter syndrome plays a very key role in us as young professionals, seasoned professionals, in creating our career growth and development? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't know many professional women who don't have it. And I think it is more of a problem for women than it is for men. And I think part of my personal theory, although I've not systematically studied it, is that it has to do with everything that we do in our culture that undermines women's confidence in themselves and ability to believe that they can do hard things. And you know, I'm somebody who believes in a lot of systematic sexism as well as racism, and so I think that it's, you know, you could say, well, it's all in our minds, right? Because we're the ones telling ourselves that we're not enough.
Mhm.
I don't think I don't think it's just in our minds, because I think all the messaging is designed to make you as a woman feel like you aren't all the things, right? And
Mhm.
I think that the culture wars around women's roles, which are still ongoing, are part of the problem, because I think women are can be very hard on other women, especially ones who've made different choices.
Yes.
And so, you know, you're being assailed as a woman who's having a professional career. You're under scrutiny and being assailed by the men in the workplace, but by women who are or are not in the workplace, or are in a different role in the workplace. Like, I know that as a female lawyer in a male dominated law firm, there were other women there. They were just in support roles.
Mm.
And I mean, we had a couple of other women lawyers too. They just weren't litigators mostly. So, um, you know, those women who were in more traditional non-professional jobs were super hard on the young women lawyers when they came in, super hard and
Mhm.
undermining. And so it is difficult. And then, of course, you get, I don't know, there's a lot of weird psychological dynamics, I think, that contributed to it, but it's the external messaging that erodes our ability to believe that we are something special. And yeah, I think women are amazing. And I think that maybe the answer, or the best answer that I've seen, is a more concerted effort to lift each other up. And I know that I now sound like a Facebook meme or something, but I totally believe that it's so important to straighten other women's crowns and to pay attention to them and compliment them out loud,
Yes.
because men get that kind of feedback all the time and women
Right.
don't get as much of it, because for whatever reason, like if a woman excels, it's like they feel like if they say something nice, it'll be taken the wrong way. um I'm like, you can tell me I did a killer job on that speech without me thinking you're hitting on me, right? Like, just like you told Joe that he did a great job. um I don't know why the gender role dynamics gets it so screwed up, but I think it's incumbent upon women to hold each other up, until the rest of the world figures out how that looks. And you know, I have for years made a real concerted effort to find nice things to say about people, even people I don't know. Like, I'm the stranger in the elevator who's like, that color looks fantastic on you. But that's, you know, there's only so many things you can do when it's a stranger in the elevator, but you can get to like deeper, more meaningful praise. Like, that was a very kind thing. I see what you did there. You saw that, you noticed that so and so was having a bad day and you were really kind. Or, gosh, that was a smart idea that you raised in that meeting. It doesn't cost anything to be unafraid to praise someone else's fabulousness and to see it, right? That doesn't put them ahead of you. It's not like there's one spot and all the women are vying for it.
Right.
There's room for all of us. We're not the ones that are the problem squeezing us out at the table. So I think that imposter syndrome, I think women need to be taught about it and how to counteract it. And I think we need to hold each other up.
Couldn't agree anymore. Definitely the repositioning of the crown is very important. You know, you got to support, you know, your fellow sister for all of us when it comes to, you know, allowing us to be us in our own spaces. And when we're able to do that, I think we all can move forward more successfully and in a collective and supportive manner. So
Let me
I just want to
add this.
thank you. I'm
But
sorry.
one last thought, and that is, if it weren't for the diversity of my family of friends, I think it would have taken me longer to figure that out, because I think it's my female friends of color who made that the most amazingly clear to me, because I think that women of color do a better job of that than white chicks do. My personal opinion.
Wow.
So I'm grateful, deeply grateful for the lessons that I've learned by broadening my friend network.
Mhm.
And it just always comes back to, you get better thinking when you do it with different people.
Yeah, it's a collective thing. It always works. I don't think we can probably sit here and think of where if a collective effort that did not work. I mean, if we did, it would really surprise me. But you are making some true statements there. I just want me personally, Janet Chappelle, want to thank you so much, Attorney Wells, for joining us and sharing in our lunch and learn today. If anyone has any questions or comments that you would like to make, you are more than welcome to. I know we've gone over, well, probably about 3-4 minutes, but we're still in good timing. If you do want to share or ask a question, you're more than welcome to. Janelle, do you have anything you would like to say to kind of close us out for today?
Yes, absolutely. First of all, Attorney Wells, and as my friend, I get to say Barbara, thank you so much for for really your resilience. This is a prime example of how women, we just overcome so much adversity. Barbara prepared slides for us and pictures and graphics, and guess what? We weren't even able to use them, but everything still turned out well. So thank you for that. Um, you talked about so much, everything I thought I was going to ask, you've already covered it. There was a lot to unpack here, especially when you talked about the diversity and then being in the workplaces. And um, just to sort of piggyback off of what you said, I believe it really, true diversity starts with the diversity of thought. When we all have that perspective and we all have a lot to offer, based on all kinds of different demographics and so forth, I appreciate your stance on that, and you always advocate for that. So thank you again. One question that I do have on here is, you mentioned 2 books, and one I definitely will purchase, The Year of Yes by Shonda Rhimes, but you mentioned another, which was, I don't know how she does it. Who's the author of that, or do you remember?
Let me look really quickly. It's not like it's a great book. It's just, it really spoke to me. It's by a British woman, and it's set in England. Oh, they made it into a film.
Oh.
Allison Pearson, Pearson. And they did make it into a movie, which
Okay.
was in 2011. Gosh, that's a long time ago. But yeah.
Yeah, I'll definitely take a look at that. And I loved,
What it does it is transformative. I mean, I'm sorry, The Year of Yes was transformative. And you want to talk about a really successful person who has imposter syndrome? Shonda Rhimes. I was like, what? Speak? I
Yes.
don't understand.
Yeah. I think
Yeah,
we're our own
um,
worst critics, and I think that goes back to having self-care and knowing how to identify and reverse that, and not have you know, not to be so critical of ourselves, and you know, making that space for us to be. It's okay not to be perfect or attempt to be perfect. It's okay to be in a space of a learning space and a growing space. So again, it all does reflect back on self-care at the end of the day for it all. So again, thank you so much. If there are no other questions or comments, thank you guys for joining. We will have our next session next week. which will be on the 27th. It will start at 12. Hopefully, I will be able to have my camera on and it won't say I'm sharing it with someone else. I'm not sure about that at all. But we do have our speaker that will be joining us will be Nicole. Okay, and there you should be able to find additional information on the SHRM website for our next speaker. So please get the access information and join us. Until then, you guys enjoy the rest of your day and as well as your week. Thank you.
Yes,
so
thank you
much.
again. Thank you.
Bye-bye.